Okay, so next on our discussion is the modifying or editing of objects here in 3ds Max. First off, just to recap, we are done with the creation of objects and the different ways to create it. Now, let's say we have an object, we are also done with the navigation or how to view the objects, no, in several ways. We also have finished discussing the the selection or how to select objects, even how to hide them. And also we are done with the tools or the introduction to the tools and the tool partners, that we can use, in our modeling. Now, let's go to the next part, or next to the creation is the modification. To modify or simply means to edit an object. Here in 3ds Max, you just need to select that object and go to the modify panel. Now, what are the things that you can edit about the object or edit the object with? First off, you can change the object's name. For example, if I change this to red teapot, and then that name reflects already also reflects here in the object list. You can also change the object's color. This is not yet the materials, but this is just the default materials for the object. You can change it. And then below here are the parameters. The parameters simply means the measurements of the objects. Now we have talked about that the parameters, or sorry, the numbers here are expressed, or the units being used by the numbers here or the values here in the parameters are initially centimeters. So though there is no label of units here, it is understood na that by default 3ds Max is using centimeters. Now, here we have 30 for the radius, so that means 30 centimeters for the radius. Is if I set that to 15, so that's going to be 15 centimeters for the radius of this teapot. Every object, for example, let me create a box. Whenever you have an object or a different object selected, of course, a different parameter will appear. A different parameters list will appear. So for example, if it's teapot, since it is round, it is measured by radius. If it is a box, it is rectangular, it is measured by the following dimensions: length, width, and height. Okay? So again, all of these, let's say, are using centimeters for the units. But of course, as we have mentioned, every object has a different parameter content. For example, the teapot, it it has this teapot parts, which is unique to the teapot or exclusive for the teapot, because when it comes to the boxes, it doesn't have that. But the common thing that they have is or are the segments there. If I will press F3 and F4 to see the shades and faces, or the wireframes and faces, as you can see here, the segments are actually, we can say that the segments are like pixels. They are the ones that made up the 3D object, the topology of segments or the arrangement of these segments. The segments are actually the lines or the intersection of lines. And in every line intersection, of course, vertices are also present, which is a sign that they are merging on that point. Okay, so that means the segments is also the resolution, of the object, or the smoothness or the roughness of the object, the low polyness or the high polyness of the object. Example for the segment is, for example, if I double this segment, let's say 16, you will see that it becomes more and more smooth. If I go for 32, so it's even smoother. But let's lessen that. from the default 8 segments, I will lessen it to 4. And as you can see, the image, or sorry, the model becomes choppy or chiseled or cornered. So it is becoming low poly. If I go for, let's say, 2, it is even more low poly. So that is what the segments are for, or how you can set the number of segments. This is actually the resolution of the object. But the difference between 2D and 3D is you can start with a low poly or low resolution object and then later on build up to a higher resolution object, or let's say a smoothened resolution object. Okay, so that's the difference. Unlike in 2D in 2D imaging, you are required to initially have a high resolution image to have a better looking output. Okay? So that's the difference between them. Now, let's go to the segment, for example, of the box. By default, the box only have one segment, so I can add in different dimensions. Let's say in the length segments, I can add 3, and then in the width segment, I can go for 6, and then in the height segment, let's go for 12. So you can see how it varies. So this adjustment of segments will always depend on you. No? So let's say the requirement is 5 on each, and then there you have it. Okay, so that's the segments. Now that, or those are the things that we can do in the modify panel. It is actually the editing part of the panel. But one thing, or one important thing that we can do also in the modify panel is the addition of the modifiers. The modifiers are like object effects that we can add temporarily to our objects, and then we can edit them accordingly as per the parameters that they provide to help us out in modeling, which is going to be our next topic. I'll see you on that lesson.